shadows of history.
Across the ancient kingdoms of the Indonesian archipelago, weapons were never seen as ordinary tools of war. In royal courts like Majapahit during the 13th and 14th centuries, commanders believed their blades carried something deeper than steel. Chronicles describe how war leaders would stand before sacred weapon altars inside palace halls before leading soldiers into battle. These rituals were not simply symbolic. Many believed that a blade forged with the right materials and the right spiritual intention could protect its owner in war. Royal commanders treated these weapons almost as companions, objects that connected them to ancestral power, divine protection, and the authority of the king. Among the many weapons used across Nusantara, none carried more cultural significance than the keris. Its distinctive wavy blade and layered metal patterns, known as pamor, were believed to hold hidden meanings. Some patterns symbolized protection, others leadership, prosperity, or courage. Ancient texts and oral traditions suggest that warriors did not choose their blades randomly. Instead, royal blacksmiths carefully forged each weapon for a specific individual. The combination of iron, meteorite fragments, and repeated folding of metal created not only physical strength, but also patterns that many believed influenced destiny. Archaeological evidence supports the importance of these beliefs. Temple reliefs across Java, including those from the Majapahit period, depict warriors carrying ceremonial weapons rather than simple battlefield tools. Historians studying these carvings believe they represent the cultural relationship between warfare and spirituality in Nusantara societies. The weapons were symbols of authority, identity, and cosmic balance. To the commanders who carried them, these blades were not merely instruments of violence, they were sacred objects believed to influence the outcome of war itself. Behind every sacred weapon stood a master craftsman known as an empu. In the royal courts of Java, these blacksmiths were considered far more than metal workers. They were respected as spiritual artisans who combined metallurgy with ritual knowledge passed down through generations. The forging of a keris blade required extraordinary patience and precision. Raw iron was heated inside charcoal furnaces until glowing, then hammered repeatedly into layered sheets. Through this process, the empu created the unique patterns that defined each blade's identity. The process of creating a keris blade could take weeks or even months. Each strike of the hammer folded the metal again and again, strengthening the structure while shaping the blade's distinctive patterns. Some historical accounts describe the inclusion of rare materials, such as iron from meteorites. These celestial metals were believed to add spiritual energy to the blade. Whether these beliefs were symbolic or literal, they reveal how deeply metallurgy and spirituality were intertwined in Nusantara weapon craftsmanship. But the forging process did not end when the blade cooled. Many traditions describe additional rituals performed by the empu after the weapon was completed. Offerings of flowers, incense, and prayer were sometimes conducted before presenting the blade to its future owner. These ceremonies reinforced the belief that a keris possessed character, almost like a living presence. For royal commanders who received such a weapon, it symbolized both protection and responsibility. The blade represented the spiritual authority of the kingdom itself. In many Nusantara kingdoms, weapons were closely connected to royal authority. When a commander was appointed to lead armies or govern a territory, the king often presented a ceremonial blade as part of the official ceremony. This gesture was far more than a symbolic gift. It represented trust, loyalty, and the transfer of royal responsibility. The weapon itself became proof that the commander carried the authority of the throne wherever he went. Royal keris were often masterpieces of craftsmanship. Their handles could be carved from rare wood or ivory, decorated with gold and precious stones. The scabbards were sometimes covered in intricate metalwork. But beyond their beauty, these weapons also carried historical significance. Some blades were believed to have been forged generations earlier and passed down through royal families, becoming heirlooms of power. When a commander carried such a weapon into battle, he was not just carrying steel, he carried the legacy of the kingdom, the skill of the empu who forged it, and the beliefs of the people who trusted its power. In this way, sacred weapons became symbols of unity between ruler, warrior, and tradition. The blade was both a physical weapon and a cultural emblem of Nusantara civilization. Before marching into battle, many commanders in the kingdoms of Nusantara performed rituals believed to strengthen both mind and spirit. These practices were often conducted in quiet moments before sunrise or during the stillness of night. A war leader might sit alone with his weapon placed before him, focusing his thoughts through meditation or prayer. In these moments, the blade was not merely inspected for sharpness or balance. Instead, it became a symbol of connection between the warrior and forces believed to guide fate. Historical accounts from Javanese chronicles describe how commanders sought inner calm before battle, believing that emotional discipline could influence victory as much as physical strength. Offerings often accompanied these rituals. Flowers, incense, and symbolic foods were sometimes placed beside the weapon. These gestures reflected the belief that harmony between the physical and spiritual worlds could influence the outcome of war. In many traditions, warriors believed that their blades possessed a certain character or presence. The offerings were therefore acts of respect toward the weapon itself and toward the unseen forces that the warrior believed might protect him in battle. When dawn arrived and the army began to move, these rituals had already shaped the mindset of the commander. Carrying the blade into battle was not simply a military necessity, it was the continuation of a ritual that linked courage, belief, and leadership. For the soldiers who followed him, the sight of a commander wearing a sacred weapon reinforced the idea that their cause carried both royal authority and spiritual protection. Weapons were not the only objects believed to offer protection. Many warriors across the archipelago carried talismans or charms known as jimat. These objects could take many forms: small cloth pouches containing sacred verses, carved stones believed to carry protective power, or metal charms engraved with mystical symbols. Historical sources suggest that these talismans were often created by spiritual practitioners who combined religious teachings with local traditions. Warriors believed that such objects could shield them from danger or misfortune during combat. The contents of these talismans were usually hidden from view. Some contained handwritten prayers or sacred texts. Others held fragments of metal, herbs, or stones believed to possess protective qualities. While modern historians debate the literal power of these objects, their cultural importance is undeniable. For warriors preparing to enter dangerous battles, such talismans represented reassurance in an uncertain world. Together with sacred weapons, these talismans formed part of a broader belief system surrounding warfare. Courage in battle was seen as not purely physical strength, but also spiritual readiness. The combination of ritual, weapon, and talisman created a psychological foundation that strengthened the morale of those preparing to face conflict. Across centuries of Nusantara history, certain weapons became more than personal possessions. They became legends. Ancient manuscripts written on palm leaves, known as lontar, contain references to famous keris blades believed to possess unique characteristics. In Javanese chronicles, some weapons were described as having personalities or destinies connected to the warriors who carried them. These stories often traveled across generations through oral tradition before eventually appearing in written form. Historians studying these manuscripts believe they reflect how deeply weapons were embedded within the political and spiritual imagination of ancient societies. Many of these legendary blades were believed to have been forged by highly respected empu serving royal courts. Their craftsmanship and symbolism made them objects of prestige within palace circles. Some chronicles even describe blades passed down through generations of rulers and commanders. Whether these stories represent literal history or cultural symbolism, they reveal how sacred weapons were intertwined with ideas of authority and leadership. When these weapons appeared in royal ceremonies or processions, they reminded observers of the long lineage connecting past and present rulers. Through ritual and storytelling, legendary blades became powerful symbols of continuity in Nusantara political culture. Today, archaeologists and historians examine these traditions using physical evidence preserved in museums and excavation sites. Ancient keris blades recovered from royal centers and historical settlements revealed the remarkable skill of Nusantara metalworkers. Through careful analysis, researchers can identify forging techniques, metal composition, and patterns unique to specific regions or historical periods. Scientific tools now allow researchers to study the internal structure of these blades in extraordinary detail. The layered patterns created by repeated folding of metal are visible even under magnification. This process not only produced distinctive visual designs, but also improved the strength and flexibility of the weapon. Such discoveries highlight the advanced metallurgical knowledge possessed by traditional empu centuries ago. Inside museums across Indonesia and Southeast Asia, these artifacts are now preserved as part of the region's cultural heritage. They provide tangible evidence of the traditions described in historical texts, connecting modern audiences to the craftsmanship and beliefs of earlier civilizations. One of the most fascinating aspects of the keris is the pattern that appears along its blade. Known as pamor, these designs emerge naturally during the forging process as layers of metal are folded together repeatedly. Each blade forms a pattern that is unique, almost like a fingerprint created by the empu's craftsmanship. In traditional belief systems, these patterns carried symbolic meaning. Certain pamor designs were associated with leadership and authority, while others represented prosperity, protection, or harmony. Owners sometimes sought blades whose patterns matched their personal aspirations or social role. Although modern historians interpret these meanings as cultural symbolism rather than supernatural power, the belief in pamor deeply influenced how people valued and preserved these weapons. Even today, the symbolism of pamor remains part of cultural traditions in Indonesia. The keris continues to appear in formal ceremonies, weddings, and cultural events, representing dignity and connection to historical heritage. During the 16th century, warfare across Southeast Asia began to change dramatically. International trade brought new technologies, including firearms introduced by foreign merchants and colonial powers. Muskets and cannons gradually transformed the strategies used in regional conflicts. These new weapons offered advantages in range and destructive power. Over time, many armies across the region began to adopt firearms as part of their military equipment. This technological shift slowly reduced the practical role of traditional blades in battlefield combat. Yet the cultural significance of the keris did not disappear. Instead, it evolved. While firearms dominated warfare, sacred blades continued to symbolize leadership,
honor, and heritage within Nusantara societies. Today, many of the sacred blades once carried by royal commanders rest inside museum collections or family heirlooms carefully preserved through generations. Their blades no longer face the chaos of battlefields, yet they continue to hold deep historical meaning. In ceremonies and cultural traditions across Indonesia, the keris remains a symbol of dignity and heritage. It represents the craftsmanship of ancient Empu, the authority of past kingdoms, and the beliefs that shaped Nusantara civilization for centuries. The story of sacred weapons reminds us that history is not only about wars and empires. It is also about the traditions, beliefs, and artistry that defined how people understood power and leadership. If you want to explore more hidden traditions, forgotten civilizations, and mysterious chapters of world history, subscribe to Shadows of History and continue discovering the stories that live in the shadows of the past.